Hello, everyone, and welcome on to Branded. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes and beyond the brand to give you the clarity and confidence to challenge the status quo and show the fuck up in your own life. I'm Sarah Glenn, and I'm super excited to bring you guys Crystal Atkinson. Her and we connected in a coaching program a little while back, and we have stayed connected utilizing the universe of social media. And I'm really excited to bring you, Crystal. Thank you so much for being here, by the way. I'm happy to, have you on this afternoon and get this thing recorded.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
100%. Okay, you guys, Crystal has spent her life in the world of growth and leadership. And this is something that I think they're kind of buzzwords, but we're going to dive into a little bit more of what that really looks like, because sometimes it's a little bit gritty and it's not really all of the shiny, glittery things that we think it is. So her passion is really to help women ditch the excuses, uncover your passions, and really live your life vibrantly. And I'm really passionate about all of those things as well, which is why I asked her to be on this podcast. And something that recently I have been diving into my content with is some John Maxwell leadership stuff. And Crystal is actually a certified Maxwell leadership coach. She's a speaker, she's a trainer, she does all the things. And I'm really happy to have her here today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's all true. All of the above.
These are all true things. I love it. Okay, so first off, as we get to know you a little bit, can you take us back to before you were where you are now with having a business online and all the things? What did life look like before you started doing any of your own, leadership and growth and all of that?
Okay, my face life, not my Facebook life, but face-to-face, I am a teacher by trade and an administrator. So I have spent almost 22 or around 22 years in the world of public education. I have taught everything. I've been a school-based administrator and currently working as a learning coach. And what I started to unpack probably a good decade ago were all of the limiting beliefs that women specifically held. And I just started to work with women in that space who were saying, well, I can't, but, and I can't, but. And of course, a decade ago, we didn't understand things like the gaps that hold us back that Maxwell teaches about. We didn't understand about personal growth and that you can have many different facets of your being come to life to support other people. And so I just organically started challenging women in their paradigms and thinking, okay, but why not? And what would happen if? And where does that belief actually come from? From, not just, oh, I don't think I couldn't because I have little kids. There is something way deeper if you are thinking you cannot live your life because you have little kids. And so 10 years ago, I went back and did my master's in educational leadership. And I had 2 little kids and a husband who worked overseas. And from there, I entered into the world of leadership formally as an administrator. And I had comments like, I can't believe they hired you to be in that school because the other leader is also a woman. They were not saying that to 2 men in a building, let me tell you.
No.
Yeah.
Oh
and
gosh,
so
ridiculous.
I started to just realize that, okay, these thoughts are everywhere.
Yeah.
And so then from there, as I helped other women just really get to the root cause of their limiting beliefs. And again, we didn't have that verbiage. We weren't talking about limiting beliefs. We know a lot more about that now. Not only did I level up myself, but then I helped other women enter that space of leadership. And then the world shut down. And from there, I was like, I needed something positive. I needed to be a light in the world. And so I just started playing online. And I was like, if you were negative, you were blocked. I just had no space for that in my life. I'm like, I'm going to bring light into the world. And so I wanted to help women just see that they can level up and they can do the things. And so I now officially, day job, I train teachers and administrators all over. I'm in Canada. So all over my province, several provinces I've traveled to. And then that just kind of bled into the online world where I'm training at the Women in Leadership Conference in our capital city in a couple months when is that? May, I think. And have several other positions like that where I'm helping women in that world. But what I realized is women are women and we hold ourselves back. It doesn't matter if you are an online entrepreneur, if you're a nurse, if you're a stay-at-home mom, we all have those same limiting beliefs. And so I just was like, I just want to help as many women as I can to just ditch it. I'm just not interested in the excuses. I can be a little bit like blunt. My mom is from Detroit, so I blame her. I'm like a little bit blunt, but I want to help women just live their lives vibrantly.
Yeah. So I'm very blunt too. I mean, as you probably know from my content, and if anybody's new here, you're going to hear me say the word fuck a couple times, probably, maybe not in this episode, but it comes out. I'm pretty blunt too. And it stems from, for me, it's like, kind of like how you say, like, I'm really sick of the excuses. I'm sick of these conditioned beliefs that we are carrying around on our backs, like backpacks with, 50-pound weights inside of them. And we're carrying them around still with the expectation of excelling at something, of being successful. And it's like, how on earth are you going to climb to the top of the mountain when you are literally being anchored by all of these belief systems that don't serve you anymore? And having somebody like you in a position of leadership, but also conveying leadership and empowering leadership, right? You're not keeping it for yourself. You're giving it away left and right every chance you can get. And that's what's so powerful about the online space, because you were already doing that, right? Inside your systems and with the people you were meeting with face to face. And that's one of the things about social media that I find is so intriguing, is that it kind of puts your life and the things that you're good at, also the things that you're not so good at, but it puts it under a microscope, and really it like magnifies everything. It makes everything more evident, the good and the bad kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why a lot of people get a little bit like, yikes, when it comes to social media, because they don't want to face the things that they don't like, those limiting beliefs, those, all those kinds of things. So work like you're doing. And I love the way you present what you're saying. Like, you have such an air of calm and knowingness. Like, when you speak, just whenever I was sitting here listening to you, I'm like, I could just sit and listen to Crystal all day long. This is so great. So no wonder you're a speaker and a trainer, and like, you found great success in that. So how as obviously you said, the world kind of shut down. And so all the people that decided to take that as an opportunity and not say, woe is me, where are they now 3 years later, almost 4 years later? They have businesses. Yes. They have huge groups of people that they're inspiring and all the things. So what did that look like for you when you started, as you said, playing, online? Because there's a lot of people that are kind of in that space today, right?
Yeah. By accident, truly by accident, like so many people. I was not super active online. I did not have a social media presence, but I ended up finding a product that I liked and I shared it. I wasn't making commission or anything on it, but I was just like, hey, I love this thing. And then that kind of blew up and I was like, oh, you mean you can actually make money online? And as a teacher, it's really difficult to make side income. So we've got like a fixed, this is our income. And if you take days off, then you get less income. It's not like, oh, you can work an extra day or take an extra shift. And so for me, I wasn't willing to be tutoring or time clocks or anything like that to earn extra income, because I did have 2 little kids at home at the time. And so this kind of like unfolded and I was like, this is actually a real thing. Like, you can actually make a living, maybe not make a living at first, but you can make significant money online. And so that just kind of opened up my eyes to something different. And then from there, I realized, and you and I have talked about this before, I don't actually enjoy selling products per se, but I love serving and I love helping and I love challenging women. And so that flowed into a space initially through that coaching program we were in together, where I really started to think about, what am I passionate about? What am I skilled in? And who can I help in this world? Who just needs somebody to just give a space to listen and to ask a really good question and then challenge. And that is my strength. So then I just started to do a whole lot of work online free. I was not making money off of it. Really, it was doing trainings for women and masterminds for women and small group coaching for women, just because I was passionate about it and I saw a need. And then as I got into it further, I thought I really would like to expand my skill set in this area. And that's when, again, I just kind of stumbled upon Maxwell's program. I had read several of his books before, and I liked them. I liked the concepts in them. The teachings resonated with me, and I thought, oh, this could be good. And I like lots of different things. So for me, it was coaching and speaking and training. And I was like, I already do all three in my day job. It just fit. It just made sense to say, okay, I'm going to formally get some skills outside of the world of education and just see where that takes me. So then that's kind of, it just evolves, right? I tell teenagers in schools all the time, follow your passion. The job will take care of itself. Follow your passion. You will make it work. Something will unfold for you. And so I just had that heart to heart with myself where I'm like, am I following my passion? Am I going to do the things and not worry about the details? I only need to do the next step. I don't need to worry about 10 steps down the road. And so that was my next step. And so since then I have been, gosh, I always have a mastermind running. I've got small groups running all the time. I have asynchronous courses. So ones that I have recorded and people can access those courses now afterwards. But I didn't start there, right? Like I just started by being like, oh, hey, Sarah, you have a great vibe. Tell me about you. That's it. That's how I started.
See, and that's such an important point to make. So many people, especially over the last 3 years, as the idea of business coaching, social media marketing, all of these things, like what was relatively unknown for a very large portion of the population prior to the pandemic is now something that everybody and their mom is an expert in, is what it seems like, right? So I think it's really, really important to understand that we all started with no followers, no audience whatsoever, with one person that was like totally vibing with our content. Like we all started there. And just like you in 2020, when I decided, I had found a product, I was like, it was working for me. I liked it. I sort of was accidentally then became selling it. And I'm like, what just happened to me? I didn't even realize this was like a thing. So same, I just sort of stumbled into all of the world of e-commerce, everything, how it had moved online. And we're thrown into this giant pool now of people that are multimillionaires that are quote unquote doing the same thing I'm doing. And I'm like, well, where the fuck are my millions? Like I want that too. But it's really hard to see that like your starting point, it's hard to recognize that it was also their starting point too.
Yeah.
And it's super hard to see that online, and not enough people are transparent about that, in my opinion. It's gotten a little out of control with the I work 2 days a week and make 70 grand a month kind of mentality. There's no possible way, right? Like unless there's other people doing the work the other 5 days of the work week, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you got yourself to only working 2 days a week, but you have a team that is helping you with all the other logistics of things. So I think it's important with like these types of conversations. I love that you brought that up, that you're like, yeah, I just started by finding a person that was like, they have a cool vibe.
Yeah.
How are you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And realizing too, like if you do have that passion to serve in whatever capacity, sales, service, whatever online, you need to know that your biggest supporters are going to be other people in similar spaces online, and not to have your heart broken when your family member or your friend or whomever's like, nah, I'm not going to support you in that way. that happens, and that's natural, and that's real, and no different than if you're going to go back to post-secondary and say, I'm going to be a teacher, and somebody says, why would you want to be a teacher? You don't make any money. Not everybody is going to understand your path. But again, if we take it back to your passion, a life well lived is going to have that connection between your skills and your passion. It's not one or the other. We really need to lean into all of the parts of who we are. I think to have that peace that when you lay down at night, you're like, wow, this is a great day. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're like, today's going to be a great day. I just know it's going to be a great day. You don't even question it. It's just a fact. It's already done.
Oh, that is such an important key factor. The passion. The passion is the missing piece, I think, for the majority of adults that are in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you look at other people, like let's say you work corporate or you're a teacher, you know, any of those things, and you look around and you see like you're at the grocery store and you're like, damn, that lady looks really happy. Like, I bet she loves her job. Maybe she's following her passion. Like maybe she didn't just punch the clock today and was, you know, building somebody else's dream. And it took me a very long time to recognize how lucrative following your passion can be, because I don't think that we're actually taught that it's okay.
Yeah.
And you being in the education field, like you are changing the generations to come of how these kids are going to perform and perceive what being in the workforce really, really feels like and looks like. And you're creating like impassioned young adults. Like that's just so exciting.
Yeah, it is. Well, and like you say, that passion, there isn't one path anymore. You know, I say to parents all the time when they think, well, my kid needs to do this, or I talk to a girlfriend, we'll go out for drinks and wings, and then they'll say, well, I can't do this because I did. And again, those limiting beliefs and all of those barriers. And I just think we need to get away from, I'm going to do this one thing in life and I'm just going to stay there and be safe, because perhaps you were a dancer as a kid and now you're a nurse. Go take a class. You're still a dancer. That part of your soul, it also needs to be fed. And so we don't need to just be one thing anymore. We can be whatever we choose to be, and we can be many different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is actually a perspective that I had probably about 10 years ago or so. I remember coming across somebody who was like, what I thought at the time was like, this person can't hold down a job to save their life. Like that's how I perceived them, because I had been living under the conditioned belief umbrella that you find a job, you get really good at it, and you keep it until the end of time. You know, climbing the salary ladder, you know, little by little each month. But then I'm looking at this person and I'm like, well, this is like a serial jobber. Like they never ever can keep a job. What's wrong with this person? But then I really started to recognize, as I, you know, in retrospect, I look back at that belief and how I perceived that person and their inability to keep a job. And it's like they were following their passion. They found that after 6 months of doing some job that it wasn't for them. And they were like, okay, I'm out. I found a different opportunity that really calls to me and I'm going to go do that. Now, I do think there's a fine line of being the serial, you know, employee where you just like never hold down anything. But there is something to be said for finding a passion around something and leaning into it. And I think that takes a lot of intention too. So I think it's not just like, what am I passionate about today? It's more of like, what is that deeply ingrained thing that no matter if you tried to get rid of it, it's just, it's part of you. And so for me, I think that's where the following of the passion kind of lies, and why it's so difficult for some people to actually pinpoint. Aside from belief systems and like conditioned stuff, what do you find actually is what kind of holds people back from having that breakthrough of like, whoa, that is the thing I'm passionate about and it's been living there this whole time. I can't believe I didn't see that. Like, do you come across those conversations with people?
Yeah, all the time. It almost always comes down to a fear of some kind. It could be public perception. It could be ability. It could be afraid of failure. It could be afraid of success. But often there is an underlying fear. The next step as a coach, though, is you need to, okay, you know the fear, but we need to unpack that. And we need to see where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to get to a point where you can recognize it and then release it. Fear is important. Our brains are wired to protect us. And without fear, we would be in trouble. It is our little like spidey sense in the background to say, oh, danger ahead. But when we recognize that and we're able to like cognitively look at that and say, oh, yeah, that is scary. And if I'm online, somebody is likely not going to like me, or they may say something that I don't like, or, but I'm actually safe and I'm okay. So thank you. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm okay in this situation. And being able to have that dialogue with ourselves, especially as women, when we're still, especially in, the adult age bracket, we're still at a generation where we want to please people and we want to do the right thing. That's very normal for women. Women are nurturers. We have different energy. We've got feminine energy. We've got masculine energy. And to be able to tap into those different parts of us and acknowledge them and embrace them is really important. But we need to move past that fear. Often for a lot of people, that fear does funny things. Brene Brown talks about the story we tell ourselves, and that's often it. What is the story you're really telling yourself around whatever that fear is that you have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. And this actually leads me perfectly into the next question I was going to ask you, because fear, failure, all of the things. And I think it's incredibly interesting how we fear success and money and all of that.
Yes.
That's stuff that I am working through as well. Like just a fear of success and of having money. Cause then it's like, well, that's a whole new identity I have to become somebody who is successful and has all the money and all the things. So yeah, anyways, that's a tangent. But what I wanted to actually ask you about next was, is there a moment that you can pinpoint in your own kind of journey that at the time it just felt like the worst failure? You were beside yourself. Like, I cannot believe this just happened. Should I stop? Should I just not keep going forward? But now as you look back at it, you're like, that was one of the best opportunities I ever had. Is there something like that for you?
I wouldn't say in terms of failure, because that's not the way I process things. I would say I've had doors closed that I didn't want closed. And I'm going to share two of them. So the first one was, I was teaching in a school. I was pregnant with my second daughter and was told by all the people evaluating me, you're amazing, you're doing great things, you will for sure end up with a continuing contract, all the things. And then I ended up towards the end, right at the end of the school year, with internal bleeding, and I had to go out on bed rest.
Oh no.
So the superintendent, who hasn't been with us for 20 years now, found out about it and said, we are absolutely not giving her another contract because she will disrupt the school year. And I was devastated because I had a 3-year-old at home at the time, and she would come to me and be like, Mommy, read me this book and do this and do that. And I would be in tears saying, no, I have to do this work. I have to do my day job. Like that was the most important thing to me. I learned in that moment, priorities.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to say, your priorities. It's an entirely different thing to live them. And while I would have said my family was the most important, in that moment, you would have realized that actually work was taking the priority over my 3-year-old. And it was a blessing, because never again did I put work before my family, ever again.
Wow.
And I was devastated because I wanted the stability of the paycheck. I had, wanted the health benefits. Like there were so many things that came with that contract that I no longer had access to. And that was scary, and it was frustrating, and it did not feel fair, and it wasn't fair. But also as a beginning teacher, you're not going to fight that or you would never get another job again. So I just had to let it lie. And then fast forward, I have applied for jobs that I really wanted and that I was really passionate about and didn't get. And at the same time, I was able to look at those and say, like, dang, I really wanted that. And I know I would be really good. But that just means there's another door about to open. Yeah. And so I'm just at that point, then I'm looking. I'm like, okay, where am I supposed to go next? Where's the next direction? And so I'm really strong at not getting too hung up with other people's decisions that impact my life. I ultimately get to choose where I go.
That is such an enlightened approach and perspective. I love that. Like, wow, you just like mic dropped that question. That was so good. So I want to touch on a couple things that you mentioned, like seeing it not as a failure. Mm-hmm. First off, huge perspective shift on knowing that like you could have turned around and pointed the finger right at yourself and been like, I did something wrong. Why didn't this happen the way, it didn't unfold like it quote unquote should have? Yeah. Because of what did I do wrong? And it's like, you literally had all of these things out of your control. You were bleeding internally. Like you have to make sure you and your child are safe. And then, like you said, like you're not going to let somebody else's opinions or what they think about something dictate how you feel about it. That is hugely enlightened. And I wish more people would feel that way. And it took me a while to feel that way too, to understand that how somebody reacts to something, what they say and do is entirely in their control. And more times than not, it has nothing to do with you. Yeah, like nothing. If they treat people badly, it's because they treat themselves badly.
Yes.
Like you are a mirror, all of the things. So, wow. I just love that a mind like yours is what is still in the education system and is what is helping children seriously. Because like you said, the superintendent, like, thank goodness they're no longer with the system anymore, because that is creating toxicity within the education system. And unfortunately in the workforce, that kind of mentality runs rampant. Like it's just, but I do think that, things are quite cyclical. Just we see that in almost everything in nature and human trends just everywhere. And I think it's interesting how like right now in this sort of bubble of time, we are in a very enlightened phase of life where people at every age bracket are finding these moments of like empowerment and enlightenment, and they're creating big movements out of it. And I think it's really interesting how like back in the 1920s, right, you had like Napoleon Hill, and in like the 50s and 60s, you had like Louise Hay, and you have all these people that it has always been a part of society and just human nature, but it sort of goes through these ebbs and flows where it's at the forefront of our awareness. And so more and more people talk about it. And then somehow it sort of falls by the wayside. So I'm excited for what's happening right now. And I hope it lasts as long as possible.
And here's the thing, you have to be ready for it. So you can be in a room of Napoleon Hill and you can hear these great ideas and challenging thoughts. But if you're not ready, if you have put up a wall around you, it doesn't matter what's happening outside of that glass wall. We as individuals need to choose, do we want to level up in life? Do we want to live a bigger life? Or are we happy with good enough? Are we happy with same old, same old? Are we just going to be content? And if we are, that's fine. Embrace it, but don't complain about it. You can't have it both ways. Yeah. You're either going to get rid of that wall and allow yourself to be challenged, allow your thoughts to be challenged, your opinions to be challenged, and then work through those, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't do us any good to be in a room of brilliant thoughts to be like, I'm good, actually. I'm just going to go turn on the TV
Yeah.
and call it a night.
That's such a good point. I mean, it really is true. What is it that they say? Like you can't wake somebody up to enlightenment.
Yeah.
Like it has to
Yeah.
be a self-driven action that you actively want the awareness. You want to take more intentional action and all of these things. And I think a lot of us, we sort of experience these heightened levels of awareness at various stages in our lives. And usually, this is just my opinion, but usually it tends to show itself or be more evident when you are actively participating in something that you are really passionate about.
Yes.
Because I can say for me, like right now where I'm at in this space and time of, Sarah as the business owner who has her podcast and all of these things, the way I feel in my body now is very reminiscent of how I felt as a competitive gymnast when I was 10, 11, 12, 15 years old. I was so just like seamlessly in my passion that, like you said, I didn't have to think about it. It
Mhm.
just occurred every day.
Mhm.
It was part of my being. And I was at the most aware, like mentally and physically. And then, of course, I went through a stint between like 16 and 32 where I was fucking oblivious to so many things.
Right.
But I was like choosing, I felt like I needed something different. It literally was that I felt like I needed to turn my body and my brain, just finally let it rest, because I was at such a heightened state of awareness. Being a gymnast is just one of those very rigorous kinds of things. But yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about that with like when you live in your passion and having awareness be like something, I don't know, that statement, how does that resonate with you, I guess, is the question.
When we live in our passion, we can experience flow.
Mm-hmm.
And in flow, that's where our energy is so aligned and so attuned with our mind, our heart, our hands, our feet, everything we're doing. And that's that like little vortex of the world where time just doesn't exist. And we can slow down time and we can speed up time and we can just be. We can sit in it and we feel peace, we feel joy, we feel excitement. Um, that passion is a really powerful place to be. And that's why it's so important that we don't lose sight of those sparks, those little things that just light us up. And when we feel like, okay, we've had a day of meh, and now we've had 2 days of meh, and now we're like, gosh, it's been a month or two of meh. Okay, what are we doing to get out of that cycle? Because while routine is our friend in some ways, it helps our brain feel like we're safe and we're moving along, and there's a lot of good things from routine. Sometimes it's really important to shake that routine up.
Yeah.
Especially if we haven't had that passion. Like, okay, have we taken a salsa class or a painting class or went and sat in a race car or something just totally, totally outside of our comfort zone to think, oh, there's more to life. There's more to life than meh. And we start to unpack passions and they evolve and they change. But at the same time, they often have a thread of similarity between them. So as a gymnast, like you were saying, super focused, super aware, like very like tunnel vision. This is what I'm doing. As a business owner, you have all of those creative pieces that come in the performing piece, but you also have to have that track of this is where I'm going, so that when people know Sarah is going in this direction, people are like, I want to go with you. I want on that train.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens when you're living in that state of passion.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just really wanted to get your take on it. I mean, I guess it wasn't really that much of a well-formed question. Very conversational. We do things over here. But yeah, I think you mentioned the passion having this thread, and I think that's important to bring up as we are having this conversation. And maybe somebody listening is like, I just can't put my finger on what I'm passionate about. I don't know how
Mm.
many times I come across that. People are like, well, I just don't know. And I'm sure you have that conversation daily. And ha- knowing that there's a common thread. So, like the whole branding side of my business, right? For me, it kind of feels like it came out of left field because for so long, I told myself this story that I just wasn't a creative person
Mm.
because, and I can pinpoint it to the actual time and place that it happened, that this thing in my brain just went, "Doop, okay, you're not creative." I tried out for band in like seventh grade and I was already leaving school early to go to gymnastics practice. So, like, clearly my plate was full, but I wasn't that great. They had me try out on the clarinet, which is like one of the hardest things to try out on. I'm like, give me the drums or something. I don't know. But the band director was just like, don't you think maybe you're just like busy enough with gymnastics? Like maybe this just isn't for you. And I immediately, it turned off
Mhm.
that like drive for creativity and art and all of that. It just shut it right down because they weren't willing to like show me how to do it, to guide me, to mentor me into it. And so I think it's, one of those things that when people say, well, I just have no idea what I'm passionate about, it's like, what were the things you used to do as a kid that you didn't even think twice about? Like in gymnastics, clearly I had creativity
Yeah.
and rhythm and all the things. So for me to not be good at something like an instrument, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, like
Yeah.
rhythm, all of the things. But yeah, and so when branding became my business, I was like, wow, this came out of left field. But the more I think about it, it's like it didn't really though. I've
Right.
always been very good at like dressing myself, dressing other people, decorating a home, being able to have like that creative flow with gymnastics. And so I'm like, okay, it does kind of make sense now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, do you have conversations with people where it's like, what do you do in your everyday that you don't even think about?
Yeah. Women especially. Women really struggle. I can have a conversation with a woman who will say exactly what you said. I just don't know. I just don't know. I'm 35, 45, 55 years old. I guess when I was a kid, I liked this, and they're almost defeated.
Yeah.
It's like that candle has such a small flame on it that they don't know how to ignite it. They can talk about the passions of the people around them. So it's
Mm,
not like they don't know. They can say, my husband, my sibling, my child, they can recognize them in other people. But again, it's like, why do you not know your passion? Where does that come from? And it's interesting because even in discovering that, there's often a fear. Well,
yeah.
what if, what if I don't find it? Or what if I find it and then it's expensive? Or what if I don't have anybody to do it with and I have to do it alone?
Yeah.
So many women are afraid of being alone.
Hmm.
It's it's one of those things that it's so important to really unpack and then ask yourself why. Why don't you know it? Have you been so busy taking care of everyone else that you've forgotten how to take care of yourself? Because when that happens, you actually become no good at the people you were serving, and they're going to move on to find other people because now that flame is so small that you need to find ways to light it again and to have that spark in your life so that you can serve others, because
Hmm.
women are really good at helping, right? Really good at being the heart and hands of a community. So important that they follow whatever that thing is for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do find that often I hear, people are like, well, I'm incredibly passionate about helping other people. And it's like, okay, but that led you down the path of depletion? Like,
Yes.
it's other people can't be the thing that energizes you. And that's, so often you hear women talking about they're building their businesses online and their whole reason is their kids and their family. And it's like, that can't be your whole reason. It can be part of your reason,
Yep.
100%. I mean, my husband's part of my reason too,
Right.
but he's not the reason I'm doing this. He's not the reason I'm showing up to this podcast recording today. He has
Right.
nothing to do with that.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's being very cautious of allowing the depletion of your own essence. Like, yeah. Ugh.
And is it enhancing your life or is it taking from it?
Mhm.
Because there is that ebb and flow where you can give, but you also need to be receiving, or you need to be filling up on your own. Like there is a fine dance. We need to learn how to dance.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good point. The receiving, there's like this huge guilt factor associated with receiving, being a receiver of love,
Mhm.
compassion, kindness, help, any of it. It's like all of a sudden you become unworthy if you receive and if you don't
Mhm.
do all the things. And so, yeah, those are just as I just heard on a Mel Robbins podcast episode, those are the BS,
Yeah.
what do they call it? The behavior, like, what are they? BS reasons. And he used it as like our behavior systems or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was like, yeah, no, it is. It's totally BS. It's just a past behavior that we just think
Yep.
we can't. Oh man, it's
Yeah.
working with women it's tricky because there
Oh
are a
yeah.
lot of deep-seated things.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, you stay busy. So on that note, what do you have what do you have on the horizon? What's coming up for you? I mean, with entrepreneurship in general, it's always like you said, time just sort of becomes this whole other construct and it's always evolving and growing. What's something we can keep our eyes open for?
Yeah. So, yeah, always busy. Sorry about that. There are workshops, there are masterminds, there are all of these things that I'm partway through Life by Design, which is a 6-week course that women are going through with me right now to really unpack a lot of those things we talked about. And then not only unpack it, but create an action plan. What is the strategy to do that next thing? And what is that next step in your life? What does that look like? So that Life by Design has been the real huge focus of the beginning of 2024 for me. I also have been launching different trainings in different areas, leadership, communication, all of that. So lots of different things. Like I say, I'm off to several conferences in my area this spring in generally leadership. I like to help women in leadership. But my general online space is really about helping women unpack whatever's going on in their mind and creating a plan to actually live the life they want to live, not the one they feel they have to live.
So good. So good. You guys go connect with Crystal. I will put everything in the show notes for you. Her Facebook group, Vibrant You, is open to everybody. And I mean, she's there with open arms. But of course, you can just connect with her on her main profile as well. And I mean, wasn't this conversation amazing? I feel like we could just keep talking. This is so good. And you just have such a great perspective and just point of view around the topic of leadership. And one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is like I just had a conversation recently about leadership with somebody else, but the point of view was totally different. And
Right.
it's like, man, that it's just the coolest thing how we have this oneness to us all, but we all have a unique perspective. And I think, that's
Mhm.
such a big message when it comes to being in the online space in particular. People
Yeah.
think, oh, well, so and so is already doing it. I can't do that thing. No, you're
No.
you.
Yeah.
That's what makes it special.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
the topic of leadership that makes Crystal special.
No.
It's her.
Yeah. It's your story is your superpower. So don't hold it
Mhm.
back from the world.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, this was so good. Thank you so much for being here and head to the show notes, get connected with Crystal, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Branded, the podcast. Please rate and review. And for more information, visit socialjanemedia.com. I'll see you soon.